All right, Mike. Oh, there we are. Okay, that's how that's gonna work. Got it. All right, never mind. I was gonna try and use my GoPro mic on this one, but I didn't set it up properly. Okay, we're in the house. I've picked Devil Driver Dealing with Demons, which I just got the second album on vinyl. I didn't realize they had made a second album, so I just saw it Dealing with Demons, and it was the same color scheme. And I was ignoring the uncanny valley of the fact that why does the album not look exactly right? But I didn't care, and I went for it, and I love it, right? And so I didn't feel like listening to it on digital, but I wanted to play it. So I said, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do Volume 1. Which now I'm on the hunt for because I gotta have Volume 1. Because Volume 1 has that song on it. And it helped me deal with a lot of feelings I had in my disgust of social distancing. Right? I consider that an anti-social distancing anthem. It's very interesting the way a lot of people's psychology has inverted, since the pandemic, because those of us that resisted, we went into a particular mindset and got caught up in a particular conflict because of our position, right? And dealt with it in different ways, including dealing with failure in a number of ways, like I did. But that period of time also hardened a lot of people's hearts, and there's a whole lot of dehumanization of vaccinated people, which it's about a state of mind, right? It's just like, it's one thing to say those things about, like, the people that are out there spewing their freaking endorsement of things, right? Because there's a legitimate war going on. But when it's, like, when I hear people just looking, just trying to pick on that thing, and it's just like, as important as a thing that it is in the grand scheme that we need to wake people up about, they're completely under a level of hypnosis that they're nowhere near as... It would do no good in any way, shape, or form to lead with trying to wake someone up that way, right? It is good to initiate, depending on how well you know a person's situation, is how much you can initiate. And the only way you're going to know someone's situation is trust, which is established over time through the law of Gebo in terms of vulnerability. I share a vulnerable thing about myself, and it's just a question of, do I get a vulnerable thing at all, right? Like, not that moment, right? Because if I share a vulnerable thing with somebody, I don't need it to be shared right back. But, down the line, the assumption is that I've opened up a bit. If it's a relationship is based on I open up, you open up. A back and forth, and there's a way that men open up to each other, heterosexual men. There's a way that gay men, open up to each other. And then, of course, straight women towards each other. And I see that is kind of more of a natural thing. And so men don't really do that. right? Except for me, because I can be a fucking putz, right? Um, because I guess, I guess I probably would have had a different kind of life if I had a brother, and I didn't. I had a sister, and my sister is, on her own path, but I see her and her daughters, her family, often enough. I can give her a phone call right now and say hi. Everything's copacetic. There's no drama. There never was, right? We were always, um, whatever, right? But anyway, um, this is part of why I'm reading Heidegger, right? I'm reading Heidegger because this is a truth about perception of reality from me to the person standing right in front of me, and how everything in their informed universe that I couldn't possibly know about, whether it's as deep as mine or as shallow as I fear that it could be. It's his Dasein, and I have my Dasein. I know that I usually have a bigger grasp of my Dasein than the usual amount of people around me. And sometimes it disgusts me, and I just want to spit fire, Mark Passio style, and occasionally I will. Because sometimes I can find the audience to channel that, and that's why I appreciate Mark Passio. But you have to not be so hard on yourself while listening to Mark. You can get over that at the very least. You can get over that, But, you feel it under psychic attack. Why? Because it's everything that you know that you just can't say to him, and he's throwing it back in your face, and you haven't even had the conversation yet, right? Mark is excellent at psychic defense, and that's what he's fucking doing. Because he is amongst, he's looking amongst various people that for many, many years he looked at with hope, saw potential, was encouraged, and then major things failed. Major things failed. And sometimes I'm not 100% sure. Probably because I missed it, and that's my fault. In the 3 bazillion episodes and thousands of hours I have to sit through to be all copacetic. I'm probably missing about 120 episodes or something in my life. Okay. Of what on earth, right? So, I'm putting this out there because this is why I'm doing the Heidegger thing. Because this is also helping me explain to everyone else how I have been operating, right? Because I talk about Ayn Rand objectivism. This is the other side of it, right? This is being in time. This is spatiality and context of thought versus memory versus what is happening in present reality in front of you that all your senses can detect in your informed field. This all works very well with the archaics material. You just have to get from the technical vernacular to the spiritual vernacular, and it works beautifully, right? But you take the spiritual vernacular completely out, then like it starts to go HR Geiger on you real fucking fast. Um, and and you know what? I hear plenty of that in the subtext, right? Sometimes just because the technical vernacular is very neutral, um, it allows you to get over a citation from a spiritual text with a moral principle behind it that can be criticized for dogmatic interpretations that we are familiar with in our past, right? It's important to remember that. And men in particular, that's what we do, is how we hold the things accountable. Like, because I'll notice something with a trend amongst many women is wanting to see a good idea happen, right? And um, and sometimes men hearing that, they remember the bad idea. They can't think of building the good idea, though. So they look at it, as a problem, and then they say, like, yes, but I also remember how many years ago it was like this, and it was terrible. We don't want to go back to that, right? So then that appeals to traditionalist culture with women, as opposed to progressive culture with women, which is going to be listening more to futurism ideas. And women are much better at dreaming that future, because men are better at remembering the past, and that's how we work together. That's the trade-off. We build, but the woman gives us the vision to build, as well as provides the population to build with. Mother, right? I'm being funny, only because of how we're so fucking conditioned that when we hear it in such a neutral and technical manner, that it just brings us right into trauma because of slavery, right? There's a difference between being disciplined and working under a project that everyone has certain roles, and because certain people know more than you do on the basic labor end, and it's not like it's a big secret, but sometimes you just don't need to know about every dotted I and crossed T in the accounting department. You don't have to worry too much about the goose eggs, and there's like, you hold them accountable when you see it, and then there's other people there that you gotta have some trust. You gotta have some effing trust, and a lot of people don't have any honor. They're not trustworthy. They're selfish pigs, and this is why we have to have a deeper assessment. If we can understand the quality of people and circumstances around us, we don't have to be bound by that. We can shake it off, right? In the labyrinth, Jennifer Connelly goes into the garbage dump part of the labyrinth and meets the trash heap lady, and she starts piling all this memorable junk on top of her, and trying to turn her into one of them, right? This was she was that's a fairy. That's a kind of fairy trying to spirit her away and make her into one of them, right? So she resisted this awesome fairy tale stuff across all cultures, right? And it's a fairy tale thing that has a tremendous amount of impact watching the woman go through it, which is also why we have scream queens in horror films. There's something about that, right? Because the man's intrigue in seeing the scream queen is seeing everything a woman can do to get out of the monster's hands. Right? You know, Halloween, Mike Myers is built like a fucking Mack truck, and he's like the Terminator. He just doesn't stop fucking walking towards you, and he's really fucking hard to kill. And he's a man, and he's fucking twice her fucking size, and she doesn't even know, she doesn't know anything about professional self-defense, so she just has to fucking, with her nerves on end, to defend herself with a knife and all this shit, right? You don't have a Scream Queen if the Scream Queen knows how to defend herself and has gone through enough maturation to build the discipline to be a person who defends themselves, and thus has to consider those situations. It takes a different level to scare them, right? So those stories are great for the children, the man-children in the Matrix, to overcome a lot of the mental fears that keep them stuck in dark sorcery. I was a huge fan of Freddy Krueger, right? The Nightmare, right? And, reality became a big nightmare in 2020. It was a looming dark cloud after 9/11, and I saw the horror show for what it really fucking was. And Heidegger breaks down the technicalities of me watching the world change in front of my eyes in a very, very rational way. And it allows me to center myself, find higher command of the battlefield, and develop wiser strategies. And when I'm ready to start dropping my fucking leadership suggestions onto the fucking stage, I'll let you know how my informed opinion got me there. Now, I haven't even started reading yet, and I'm fucking parched. I don't know how long Chapter 69 is going to be, but I've enjoyed this rant tremendously. Before I even get started reading, let me just double check the audio. 9 is going to be, but okay, I sound great. All right. Oh wait, Fox it. Where is it? Oh, there we go. All right, kids, let's hop to 69. The temporality of being in the world and the problem of the transcendence of the world. Ah, yes, you see, this is going to be fun. This subject right here, and dude, first off, it's 69, right? So symbolically, you've got the yin and the yang, right? And here we're talking about the existential versus the inexistential, or insubstantial, the inner and the outer fucking world, the Dasein you're in, and then what's beyond the existential Dasein that is holding you down. This is everybody trying to get to heaven, the fifth dimension, or reincarnate on another planet altogether. This is all these people. I was listening to Seven Bomar talking the other day, and he had some criticism that kind of applies to me because of my attitude, which is just about having a healthy mindset here. I mean, at the end of the day, when I die, we'll see what's up. I just really want to fucking love and appreciate this time here and now because, fuck you. How do you know that this isn't going to be the best? And, And I think sometimes the YouTubers that focus on the important, serious, terrible things, they forget to bring the joy and whatnot from here and there, right? But I think that also maybe it's just they don't mean to come across that way. But we can kind of forget what their Dasein looks like. And you've got to have compassion for them, because if you just listen a little bit harder, they're still right. And they have a right to all of their fucking feelings, especially anger. And the problem is that you need to start exercising your right to be angry too. Allow yourself to be angry the next time you get fucked over. It's not healthy. It turns into a mental illness. You start rationalizing things that just, it makes you less of a person. It throws you back in there with people that don't think very much, because they're just straightening things out. Listen, right now, they're not fucking hitting you too hard with anything, really, right? You could easily just slip right back in, right? You could be Cypher chewing on the fucking steak back in the Matrix, having a good time, because what's a truth in the Matrix? Just play ball, you'll be all right. Don't worry about the tube up your ass. Don't worry that we're sodomizing you every fucking night. Don't worry that we're shoving our synthetic dick in your mouth and down your throat every fucking night. And you can't see it because you're psychically dead. And that's why you are the dead, and that is why you are Satan's child. And fuck Jehovah. The ecstatical unity of temporality, that is, the unity of the outside of itself in the rapture of the future of what has been and of the present, is the condition for the possibility that there can be an entity which exists as it's there. The entity which bears the title being there is one that has been cleared. The light which constitutes this clearedness, this Gelichtigkeit of Dasein, is not something ontically present at hand as a power of source for a radiant brightness occurring in the entity on occasion. That by which this entity is essentially cleared, in other words, that which makes it both open for itself and bright for itself, is what we have defined as care in advance for any temporal interpretation. In care is grounded the full discloseness of the there. Only by this clearedness is any illuminating or illumining any awareness seeing or having of something made possible. We understand the light of this clearedness only if we are not seeking some power implanted in us and present at hand, but are interrogating the whole constitution of Dasein's being, namely care, and are interrogating it as to the unitary basis for its existential possibility. Ecstatical temporality clears the there primordially. It is what primarily regulates the possible unity of all Dasein's existential structures. So, example, in the microcosm, like you can watch that movie that I was ranting about a couple weeks ago, Iron Claw, about the Von Erichs, right? And the father is this demiurge kind of character, right? And the brothers, the Von Erich brothers' whole universe was enveloped within the care of their father, something in which they did not question. And the movie suggests heavily, if you're paying attention to the way they film and frame it, is that this is a psychological projection of his church's depiction of God, because you become what you worship. And there's this terrible test that he puts his children through for his approval. It's so on the fucking nose, right? It's just like he's just being Jehovah. He's just being Jehovah in the non-Gnostic sense of it, right? You put the Gnostic in there, then this is a different thing, right? This is an idea of there's one God, and that one God did once make one mistake, and then it turns into a mental illness, right? As the world outside of the Von Erich family looking in is seeing it one way or the other, plus they're playing the media spin game under the excuse of protecting their image because of something that important about the sport of wrestling. So it's a lot of chicanery, right? And it killed an entire family, right? The film definitely blames this father for the death of all those kids. Which that's the one thing that's always tricky about that is that the movie doesn't show you any place where they needed to take too much personal responsibility. And they were only accountable to each other, and they're not like they have a bias towards each other as well. There's just certain things that they're just not going to tell them no, because it would be disrespecting your brother, and that's just nowhere in your possible thinking and wheelhouse. So anyway, let's get back on track. Let me double check the chat room too. It's been slim. If anybody wants to say hi in chat, please don't be shy. There we go. Only through the fact that being there is rooted in temporality can we get an insight into the existential possibility of that phenomenon, which at the beginning of our analytic of Dasein we have designed as its basic state, being in the world. We had to assure ourselves in the beginning that the structural unity of this phenomenon cannot be torn apart. The question of what the basis which makes the unity of this articulated structure possible remained in the background, with the aim of protecting this phenomenon from those tendencies to split it up, which were the most obvious and therefore the most baleful. We gave a rather thorough interpretation of that everyday mode of being in the world which is closest to us, concernful, being alongside, the ready-to-hand within the world, now that care itself has been defined ontologically and traced back to temporality as its existential ground. Concern can in turn be conceived explicitly in terms of either care or temporality. In the first instance, our analysis of the temporality of concern sticks to the mode of having to do with the ready-to-hand circumspectively. Our analysis then pursues the existential temporal possibilities that circumspective concern may be modified into a discovering of entities within the world in the sense of certain possibilities of scientific research, and discovering them merely by looking at them. Our interpretation of the temporality of being alongside what is ready to hand and present at hand within the world, being alongside circumspectively as well as with theoretical concern, shows us at the same time how this temporality is already the advanced condition for that possibility of being in the world, in which being alongside entities within the world is grounded. If we take the temporal constitution of being in the world as a theme for analysis, we are led to the following questions. In what way is anything like a world possible at all? In what sense is the world? What does the world transcend, and how does it do so? How are independent unabhängige entities within the world connected, hangt zusammen, with the transcending world? To expound these questions ontologically is not to answer them. On the contrary, what such an exposition accomplishes is the clarification of those structures with regards to which the problem of transcendence must be raised, a clarification which is necessary beforehand. In the existential temporal interpretation of being in the world, three things will be considered. A, the temporality of circumspective concern. B, the temporal meaning of the way in which circumspective concern becomes modified into theoretical knowledge of what is present at hand within the world. The temporal problem of the transcendence of the world. Okay, before we read A, it has been about a half an hour, so we're going to take a break and listen to a tune, and I'm going to... All right. Okay, that's about as smooth as I could ask for of a transition. Welcome back. All right, we have reached part A in the read. Oops. Uno momento. I'm just going...
Cold watered, cold filtered.
Hush. All right, there we go. All right, I'm being a responsible streamer and setting my thing up with minimal nonsense. Okay, there we go. So we're going to be going into a breakdown of these qualities of this idea of getting outside of the world that you're in. So, A, the temporality of circumspective concern. How are we to obtain the right point of view for analyzing the temporality of concern? We have called concernful being alongside the world our dealings in and with the environment. The phenomena which are examples of being alongside, we have chosen the using, manipulation, and producing of the ready-to-hand and the deficient and undifferentiated modes of these. That is, we have chosen ways of being alongside what belongs to one's everyday needs. In this kind of concern, Dasein's authentic existence too maintains itself, even when for such existence this concern is a matter of indifference. The ready-to-hand things with which we concern ourselves are not the cause of our concern, as if this were to arise only by the effects of entities within the world. Being alongside the ready-to-hand cannot be explained ontically in terms of the ready-to-hand itself, nor can the ready-to-hand be derived contrariwise from this kind of being, but neither are concerned as a kind of being which belongs to Dasein, and that with which we concern ourselves as something ready to hand within the world, just present at hand together. All the same, a connection subsists between them. That which is dealt with, if rightly understood, sheds light upon concernful dealings themselves. And furthermore, if we miss the phenomenal structure of what is dealt with, then we fail to recognize the existential constitution of dealing. I want to read that again. Dealing with your situation. Interesting, right? We're talking about how you literally deal with a thing, with anything. That which is dealt with, if rightly understood, sheds light upon concernful dealings themselves. And furthermore, if we miss the phenomenal structure of what is dealt with, then we fail to recognize the existential constitution of dealing. Okay, it's just like, okay, you made a deal for a car. Who did you make the deal with? Oh, the devil, right? Like, it's this, right? It's the wisdom of understanding the context of the decision that you're fucking making outside of your fucking 5 minutes of lazy research assumptions, right? That gets you in, that's more even about getting into it more than out of it, right? But, we're right now we're talking about just, you're figuring out like the parameters, right? This is like laying out the parameters of the matrix, if you will. Of course, we have already made an essential gain for the analysis of those entities which we encounter as closest to us if their specific character as equipment does not get passed over. But we must understand further that concernful dealings never dwell with any individual item of equipment. Our using and manipulating of any definite item of equipment still remains oriented towards some equimental context. If, for instance, we are searching for some equipment which we have misplaced, then what we have in mind is not merely what we are searching for, or even primarily this, nor do we have it in mind in an isolated act, but the range of the equimental totality has already been discovered beforehand. Whenever we go to work and seize hold of something, we do not push out from the nothing and come up with some item of equipment which has been presented to us in isolation. Right, this is hysterical. What did he just explain? All the ace cards in the minor arcana. Right? It's understanding what that poof of cloud for each one of those fucking manifestations represents. Right? That's something coming into your world. That's something coming into your Dasein, right? The cloud is being used as a portal for an angel to reach through the fourth dimension and hand you something in material reality. That's what's being implied in the Rider-Waite-Smith. In laying hold of an item of equipment, we have come back to it from whatever work world has already been disclosed. The upshot of this is that if in our analysis of dealings we aim at that which is dealt with, then one's existence, being alongside the entities with which one concerns oneself, must be given an orientation, not towards some isolated item of equipment which is ready to hand, but towards the equimental totality. This way of taking what is dealt with is forced upon us also if we consider that character of being which belongs distinctively to equipment that is ready to hand, namely involvement. We understand the term involvement ontologically, the kind of talk in which we say that something has with it an involvement in something is not meant to establish a fact ontically, but rather to indicate the kind of being that belongs to what is ready to hand. The relational character of involvement the relational character of involvement of its with in suggests that an equipment is ontologically impossible. Of course, just a solitary item of equipment may be ready to hand while another is missing, but this makes known to us that the very thing that is ready to hand belongs to something else. Our concernful dealings can let what is ready to hand be encountered circumspectively, only if in these dealings we are already understand something like the involvement which something has in something. The being alongside which discovers circumspectively in concern amounts to letting something be involved. That is, to projecting an involvement understandingly. Letting things be involved makes up the existential structure of concern. But concern, as being alongside something, belongs to the essential constitution of care. And care, in turn, is grounded in temporality. If all this is so, then the existential condition of the possibility of letting things be involved must be sought in a mode of the temporalizing of temporality. Right. You know, if something's going on, you want to be involved with it. You know? The world wouldn't make sense if I was in a band and then the band went to go record an album without me, to perform a live show without me, right? It's just like, in what sense am I in the band? You know, it's just words on paper. In actuality, in the actual world, it's not true. It would be a hallucination. And, I'm still susceptible to hallucinations. I suppose it's my own damn fault for wanting to trust. You're welcome. Anyway, okay. Did I read the italics? Letting things be involved makes up the existential structure of right. So, yeah, involved, caring, right? They care because they want you involved, right? In the second Matrix film, going off of the things that they did in that film, but my attitudes about the film as a whole have been in consistent shift ever since I became aware of Tom Althouse. So when I cite these things nowadays, it's not trying to give the film credit. It's just a reference point that we all know at this point. So, Agent Smith is no longer involved with the work of being an agent, right? And they don't really explain why. They don't really explain why he comes back, right? You get a sense of it as something that the Matrix does on its own, which would be a ghost in the machine kind of thing. It would be like it would be a divine feminine subtle influence, and it would be something that I'm not saying it would be the Oracle. This would be transcendent of the Oracle. It probably and it wouldn't be Sati, or would it? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it was Sati in the first place. maybe Sati was being shuffled over because maybe Sati brought Smith back to life for some weird reason. But they didn't want to explain that because they didn't write it well, I would imagine, because they didn't really write the film. They just followed a storyboard and threw a lot of psychological stuff together that made sense. And then by accident, that the film woke us up by accident. They were trying to suppress, but a handful of us got it right. Long story short is that basically what his failure in the first film got him like rejected by Deus Ex Machina because now he doesn't have a purpose. He's basically going to get deleted, and he also doesn't have a home amongst the renegades either for some reason, right? So he can't just go to the Merovingians people because the Merovingian only keeps his generation. He holds his dudes together from the old version of the program, right? So Smith is on his own. And he's a guy who got kicked out of a world and wants to get back in, right? And then, Neo has gotten himself out, and he has to go back in because he wants to get more people out. I think it's unfortunate, with the exception of just like one like Animatrix thing, that we only got like one kind of like B-side story from the Matrix of like people from Zion bumping in, and how does Zion's people like recruit ordinary average, right? Like you get like the one story, and ultimately he self-substantiated. But he still needed Trinity to be real, right? He needed to hear the call of Sophia, because we all know that this shit's Gnostic, right? This is the Matrix is techno-Gnosticism. I mean, it has to be, because it's being built upon Kabbalistic magic. And it's Kabbalistic magic that has been deliberately cursed with dark sorcery, including blood sacrifice and vile sex magic. And that's stuff that's not on camera. I'm not talking about what's presented in the film, because aesthetically I still love it. I'm a big fan of cyberpunk, right? All of that could have been done in a very, very different way, in a very cool way, that didn't involve literally putting everybody to sleep in the most impossible of circumstances. Because it isn't physically like that, right? I mean, that's why they had to take the story the way that they took it and turn Zion into this place that's growing and not just a bunker. Anyway. Letting something be moved is implied in the simplest handling of an item of equipment, that which we let it be involved in. Das Verbe desselben has the character of a towards with regard to this, the equipment is either usable or in use. The understanding of the towards which, that is, the understanding of what the equipment is involved in, has the temporal structure of awaiting. In awaiting, the towards which concern can at the same time come back by itself to the sort of thing in which it is involved. The awaiting of what it is involved in, and together with this awaiting, the retaining of that which is thus involved, make possible in its ecstatical unity the specifically manipulative way in which equipment is made present. Das Gewürzigen des wobei in eins mit dem Behalten des womit der Bewandtnis ermöglicht in seiner I didn't even really have to read this, but I'm doing it anyway. Extischen Einheit das spezifisch hintergrund Gegenworden des Zugs. Blech. That was a fairly hard sentence, and I am dry mouth. Okay. Oops. The awaiting of the towards which is neither a considering of the goal nor an expectation of the impendent finishing of the work to be produced. It has by no means the character of getting something thematically into one's grasp. Neither does the retaining of that which has an involvement signify holding it fast thematically. Manipulative dealings no more relate themselves merely to that in which we let something be involved than they do to what is involved itself. Letting something be involved is constituted rather in the unity of a retention which awaits, and it is constituted in such a manner, indeed, that the making present which arises from this makes possible the characteristic absorption of the concern in its equimental world. When one is wholly devoted to something and really busies oneself with it, one does not do so just alongside the work itself, or alongside the tool, or alongside both of them together. The unity of the relations in which concern circumspectively operates has been established already by letting things be involved, which is based upon temporality. The specific kind of forgetting is essential for the temporality that is constitutive for letting something be involved. The self must forget itself if lost in the world of equipment. It is to be able actually to go to work and manipulate something. But, all the same, inasmuch as an awaiting always leads, the way in the unity of the temporalizing of concern, concernful Dasein's own potentiality for being has, as we shall show, been given a position in care. In die Sorge gestellt. The making present, which awaits and retains, is constitutive for that familiarity in accordance with which Dasein, as being with one another, knows its way about, sich auskennt in its public environment. Letting things be involved is something which we understand existentially as a letting them be, ein Seinlassen. On such a basis, circumspection can encounter the ready-to-hand as that entity which it is. Hence, we can further elucidate the temporality of concern by giving heed to those modes of circumspectively letting something be encountered, which we have characterized above as conspicuousness or obtrusiveness and obstinacy. Thematically, perception of things is precisely not the way equipment ready to hand is encountered in its true in itself. It is encountered, rather, in the inconspicuousness of what we can come across obviously and objectively. But if there is something conspicuous in the totality of such entities, this implies that the equimental totality, as such, is obtruding itself along with it. What sort of existential structure must belong to letting things be involved if such a procedure can let something be encountered as conspicuous? This question is now aimed, interesting, not at those factical occasions which turn our attention to something already presented, but rather at the ontological meaning of the fact that it can thus be turned. When something cannot be used, when, for instance, a tool definitely refuses to work, it can be conspicuous only in and for dealings in which something is manipulated, even by the sharpest and most persevering. Hold on. And anhaltenst. This is the first of several compounds of the verb helten, or to hold, which appears in this and the following paragraphs. Others are behalten, retain in, the sense of holding in one's memory, aufhelten, hold up in the sense of delaying or bringing to a halt, festhalten, hold fast. It's interesting how the words almost seem like they're reverse expressions of each other. Festhalten is hold fast. Hold fast, fast hold. It's funny. Anyway, perception and representation of things. One can never discover anything like the damaging of a tool. If we are to encounter anything unmanageable, the handling must be of such a sort that it can be disturbed. But what does this signify ontologically? The making present which awaits and retains, getting held up with regard to its absorption in relationships of involvement, and it gets held up by what will exhibit itself afterwards as damage. The making present which awaits the towards which, with equal primordiality, is held fast alongside the equipment which has been used, and it is held fast in such a manner, indeed, that the towards which and the in order to are now encountered explicitly for the first time. On the other hand, the only way in which the making present itself can meet up with anything unsuitable is by already operating in such a way as to retain awaitingly that which has an involvement in something. To say that making present gets held up is to say that in its unity with the awaiting which retains, it diverts itself into itself more and more, and is thus constitutive for the inspecting, nachsehen, testing and eliminating of the disturbance, if concernful dealings were merely a sequence of experiences running their course in time. However, intimately these might be associated, it would still be ontologically impossible to let any conspicuous, unusable equipment be encountered. Letting something be involved must as such be grounded in the ecstatical unity of the making present which awaits and retains whatever we have made accessible in dealing with contexts of equipment. Das Befremdlassen muss als solches muss immer es auch in, oh my God, Zusammenhänge hegen umgänglich, zugänglich macht in der ekstatischen Einheit des gewärtigen, behältenden, gegenwärtigen Gründen. Dear freaking Gerd. Alright, and how is it possible to ascertain what is missing? Fehlendem, that is to say, unready to hand. Not just ready to hand in an unmanageable way. that which is unready to hand is discovered circumspectively when we miss it, im vermissen. The affirmation that something is not present at hand is founded upon our missing it, and both our missing it and our affirmation have their own existential presuppositions. So this just happened to me yesterday. I left the house, went to go to the beach, and I was almost to the beach, and I went to go grab my beach card, and I left my beach card at home, and there's way too much traffic for me to turn around and come back and for it to be a meaningful trip to the beach. So I decided to skip it. And then I realized, as I was heading down the highway, it's like, hold on a second. I think I can just park way outside of the beach in the next town over, because their beach is fully public. And but you have to pay for parking. But if I park up the street, I don't mind the walk today, and then I can get to the beach before low tide. And that worked out pretty well, and I had a good time. Anyway, such missing is by no means a not making present. Nicht Gegenwärtigen, it is rather a deficient mode of the present in the sense of the making unpresent, ungegenwärtigens, of something which one has expected or which one has always had at one's disposal. If when one circumspectively lets something be involved, one were not from the outset awaiting the object of one's concern, and if such awaiting did not temporalize itself in a unity with a making present, then Dasein could never find that something is missing, verhält. On the other hand, when one is making present something ready to hand by awaiting, the possibility of one's getting surprised by something is based upon one's not awaiting something else which stands in a possible context of involvement with what one awaits. In the not awaiting of the making present which is lost, the horizontal leeway within which one's Dasein can be assailed by something surprising is first disclosed. That with which one's concernful dealings fail to cope, either by producing or procuring something, or even by turning away, holding aloof, or protecting oneself from something, reveals itself in its insurmountability. Concern resigns itself to it. But, hold on. All right, no, never mind. Don't worry about it. But resigning oneself to something is a mode peculiar to circumspectively letting it be encountered, on the basis of the kind of discovery concern can come across that which is inconvenient, disturbing, hindering, endangering, or in general resistant in some way. The temporal structure of resigning oneself to something lies in a non-retaining which awaitingly makes present in awaitingly making present one. I'm sorry. Okay. let's the temporal structure of resigning oneself to something lies in a non-retaining which awaitingly makes present. In awaitingly making present, one does not, for instance, reckon on that which is unsuitable, but nonetheless available. Not reckoning with something is a mode of taking into one's reckoning that which one cannot cling to, that which one has not reckoned with, does not get forgotten, It gets retained so that in its very unsuitability, it remains ready to hand. Let's see here. That's all. All right. That's all German. I don't want to read it. Okay. That which is ready to hand in this manner belongs to the everyday stock of content of the factically disclosed environment. All right, bear with me a second here. How are we doing? All right, we had one guy pop up. He had a retracted message. What did he say? What did you say? Who you retracted your own message? Wonder what you said. All right, anyway. All right, so before I read that, I just want to scan ahead. Okay, good. All right. Only insofar as something resistant has been discovered on the basis of the ecstatical temporality of concern can factical Dasein understand itself in its abandonment to a world of which it never becomes master. Even if concern remains restricted to the urgency of everyday needs, it is never a pure making present, but arises from a retention which awaits. On the basis of such a retention, or as such a basis, Dasein exists in a world, thus in a certain manner, factically existent. Dasein always knows its way about, even in a world which is alien. Okay. Okay, you see, that makes sense, right? Because if you step into a place where everything's kind of unfamiliar to you, you're just going to filter things out to a basic level of, like, what is touchable that I don't want to touch, right? Which direction is up or down, left and right, so on and so forth. What people are looking at me in a threatening manner, or what creatures are looking at me in a threatening manner. You're making all of these assessments. Oops. When in one's concern one lets something be involved, one's doing so is founded on temporality and amounts to an altogether pre-ontological and non-thematic way of understanding involvement and readiness to hand in what follows. It will be shown to what extent the understanding of these types of being as such is, in the end, also founded on temporality. We must first give a more concrete demonstration of the temporality of being in the world. With this as our aim, we shall trace how the theoretical attitudes towards the world arises out of circumspective concern with the ready to hand. Not only the circumspective discovering of entities within the world, but also the theoretical discovering of them is founded upon being in the world. The existential temporal interpretation of these ways of discovering is preparatory to the temporal characterization of this basic state of Dasein. Okay. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to do B. All right. Hey, there we go. Perfect. I muted it just in time to completely block out the ridiculous commercial. And, there we go. That'll be the next song. All right, so we're going to have two more segments And they're not going to be very. They're going to be good. Going to be good enough. So we're going to read through B, take a break, read through C, and then that'll be the end of chapter 69. And then I'm going to call it a night right there. But first, I'm going to be unprofessional and do this horrible thing right in front of you. Because obviously I need to ruin all of my credibility so I can be a big success. Because that's how it works, right? I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Look, it's working. All right, Alright, put that back over there. And hey, the chat room is alive. Polymathing! What's up, dude? I'm in the middle of a workout. This is perfect. Nice. Nice. I did a workout too today. I did some chest, some shoulders, and then I hit the bag. I don't think I'm going to have time tonight because I wanted to go live, but I've got some footage of me on the bag, and so I am going to work on a sound tracking for that. I might clean it up with some edits, I'm not sure, and throw it out there. I wish I could have filmed some of my sparring I did with my trainer. I did some grapple sparring, and I'm quite the escape artist. My defense is great. Anyway. B. The temporal meaning of the way in which circumspective concern becomes modified into the theoretical discovery of the present at hand within the world. When, in the course of existential ontological analysis, we ask how theoretical discovery arises out of circumspective concern, this implies already that we are not making a problem of the ontical history and development of science, or of the factical occasions for it, or of its proximate goals. In seeking the ontological genesis of the theoretical attitude, we are asking which of those conditions implied in Dasein's state of being are existentially necessary for the possibility of Dasein's existing in the way of scientific research. This formulation of the question is aimed at an existential conception of science. This must be distinguished from the logical conception which understands science with regard to its result and defines it as something established on an interconnection of true propositions, that is, propositions counted as valid. The existential conception understands science as a way of existence and thus as a mode of being in the world which discovers or discloses either entities or being. Yet a fully adequate existential interpretation of science cannot be carried out until the meaning of being and the connection between being and truth have been clarified in terms of the temporality of existence. The italics in this and the following sentence appear only in the later editions, okay? The following deliberations are preparatory to the understanding of this central problematic within which, moreover, the idea of phenomenology as distinguished from the preliminary conception of it which we indicated by way of introduction will be developed for the first time. Hey, what's up, Destruction Art Studios? Corresponding to the stage of our study at which we have now arrived, a further restriction will be imposed upon our interpretation of the theoretical attitude. We shall investigate only the way in which circumspective concern with the ready-to-hand changes over into an exploration of what will come across as present at hand within the world. Destruction. If you didn't get a notification, perhaps you need to raise the bell notification to a higher priority. Because if you didn't know, you can click on the bell. There's a tab, and you can have that bell off at regular priority or at everybody's priority. Oh, and Slick's here. What's up, Slick? And we shall be guided by the aim of penetrating to the temporal constitution of being in the world in general, in characterizing the changeover from the manipulating and using and so forth, which are circumspective in a practical way, to theoretical exploration. It would be easy to suggest that merely looking at entities is something which emerges when concern holds back from any kind of manipulation. What is decisive in the emergence of the theoretical attitude would then lie in the disappearance of praxis, or thrax. That's either thraxis or praxis, because that looks kind of like the way they spell the th, the thirst rune, basically in Old Norse, but that might be Greek. I can't be certain. But anyway, now this thing, get out of the way. So if one posits practical concern as the primary and predominant kind of being which factical Dasein possesses, the ontological possibility of theory will be due to the absence of praxis. That is, to a privation. But the discontinuance of a specific manipulation in our concernful dealings does not simply leave the guiding circumspection behind as a remainder. Rather, our concern then diverts itself specifically into a just looking around, ein nur sich umsehen, but this is by no means the way in which the theoretical attitude of science is reached. On the contrary, the tarrying which is discontinued when one manipulates can take on the character of a more precise kind of circumspection, such as inspecting, checking up on what has been attained, or looking over the operations, Betrieb, which are now at a standstill. Holding back from the use of equipment is so far from sheer theory that the kind of circumspection which tarries and considers remains wholly in the grip of the ready-to-hand equipment with which one is concerned. Practical dealings have their own ways of tarrying, and just as praxis has its own specific kind of sight or theory, theoretical research is not without a praxis of its own. Reading off the measurements which result from an experiment often requires a complicated technical setup for the experimental design. Observation with a microscope is dependent upon the production of preparations, archaeological excavation, which precedes archaeological excavations which precede any interpretation of the findings demands manipulations of the grossest kind. But even in the most abstract way of working out problems and establishing what has been obtained, one manipulates equipment for writing, for example. However uninteresting and obvious such components of scientific research may be, they are by no means a matter of indifference ontologically. The explicit suggestion that scientific behavior as a way of being in the world is not just a purely intellectual activity may seem petty and superfluous, if only it were not plain from this triviality that it is by no means patent where the ontological boundary between theoretical and atheoretical behavior really runs. Okay, let me see here. Nice color show, enjoyable reading, the good book. Okay, you like the color spectrum? Yeah, it's my cool 20-cent strobe light from Temu. I love it. I love it. I've bought 3 things from Temu. That's all I've done, and they're the best 3 cheap things I've ever bought in my life somehow. But anyway, so let's see here. Let's see. Correct all of them. Good and sling. Slick sent a YouTube. And let's see, 1580s practice. Oh, and what was that you sent me, Slick? What was that? What's this link? Should I open it up right now? 1580s practice of discipline for a specific purpose, from medieval Latin, praxis, practice, exercise, action. Oh, okay, gotcha. From Greek, praxis, practice, acting, doing. Got it. Okay. Praxis also sounds like you could easily say abpraxis as opposed to abraxis. You could easily go ABP, and it would be practically the same word. Because the P and the B are both, they both come off you have to purse the lips to pronounce B and P, right? So you're pushing the slightest of vowelations at the end of the consonant to distinguish the B and the P. From the stem of prasein, pratin, to do, to act, see practical. From 1610s is a collection of examples for practice in 20C, given a particular sense of in Marxist jargon, also from 1580s. Interesting. I haven't heard any American Marxists use praxis in their vernacular. Praxis is also an amazing band. Oh, they must get a lot of praxis. Anyway, Justin Sledge dropped a keen map through the occulted nuggets lost by the West. The defining finagling of the definition of becoming devolved into being at pivotal time in academia. Okay, interesting. Cool. And let's see this. Ooh.
My schedule's pretty damn happy, Dave. I bought 2.
Quiet you. Ugh. All right. Oh, yeah, Esoterica, Justin Sledge. That's right. So like, I know his name. Why do I know his name? Oh, yes, he's one of my favorite Jews. But anyway, the band has Buckethead and Bill Laswell. Okay, cool. All right. And, Destruction. You, all right. All right, you've earned a little bit of trust. You get to be a mod. All right. Shoot, where was I? Theoretical moments, reading the thing, behaviorally really wrong. Okay, yeah. Someone will hold that all manipulation in the sciences is merely in the service of pure observation. So, okay, this is interesting because now Heidegger has to get back to what he was saying at the beginning of the book when he was talking about challenging how science observes and measures things. Remember Terrence Howard here? He is fucking with the language of... That's all he's doing. He is changing the meaning of the language of math in writing in order to use puns to screw up the proper order of operations in which you do a mathematical equation. He's ripping your mind to shreds. Give him none of your energy. None whatsoever. He's an actor playing a part, trying to bring a Hollywood weirdness into the real world, because people are, listen, the way the world works doesn't work that way anymore, and everybody is out on a speculation about things, right? And whether we like it or not, thanks to all the manner in which the internet lets your mind go left and right and whirly churly, we are going to have a lot of people that are going to be reconciling their normal, ordinary reality with their imagination of the existential reality that they get through their preferences on the internet, right? And that's going to inform what path they're going to say that you're on. Just like the way I talk and I see certain people doing certain things, I'm looking at them saying, oh, they're on a certain path, right? We're all going to be doing that to each other now, it seems, right? There's all sorts of people have got that going on. Even if it's not, listen, it doesn't have to be a very good fucking argument, especially because they don't have to be in that fucking world. Right? You know, it's all about the worlds you want to step into, right? And sometimes you're stepping into a world which just asks you to become an enemy. And it is a big difference between being an enemy and being an adversary, right? An adversary just means there's challenge, right? This is not about challenge, right? Becoming an enemy is about the withdrawal of care, right? The fight is not about making you a better person. The fight is about destroying you. That's a different kind of fight. There's a different kind of protocol involved there. And and that will be made obvious by the one whose will is initiating the harm to be done. It'll be set up as such. You'll hear it invoked as such. You'll see it in the circumstances, the body language, and its context. All right. Seeing, taken in the widest sense, regulates all procedures and retains its priority. To whatever kind of object to one's knowledge may relate itself, and by whatever means it may do so, still that through which it relates itself to them immediately, and which all thinking as a means has as its goal. Author's italics in intuition. The idea of the intuitus has guided all interpretation of knowledge from the beginning of Greek ontology until today. Whether or not that intuitus can be factically reached, if we are to exhibit the existential genesis of science in accordance with the priority of seeing, we must set out by characterizing the circumspection, which is the guide for practical concern. So now he's starting to talk about what does it mean to be a seer, right? This is getting, now he's questioning, like, he's saying, like, well, we can't scientifically prove there's such a thing as seers, but can we fucking prove that the phenomenon of intuitus is real? Because he's saying here that intuition yet is not really a thing, right? He lives in a world. His world, doesn't accept intuition, or at least the scientific world that he is in doesn't accept it, right? Circumspection operates in the involvement relationships of the context of equipment which is ready to hand. Moreover, it is subordinate to the guidance of a more or less explicit survey of the equimental totality of the current equipment world and of the public environment which belongs to it. This survey is not just one in which things that are present at hand are subsequently scraped together. What is essential to it is that one should have a primary understanding of the totality of involvements within which factical concern always takes its start. Such a survey illumines one's concern and receives its light from the potentiality for being on the part of Dasein, for the sake of which concern exists as care. In one's current using and manipulating, the concernful circumspection which does this surveying brings the ready to hand closer to Dasein, and does so by interpreting what has been cited. The specific way of bringing the object of concern close by, interpreting it circumspectively, we call deliberating. Überlegen. The scheme peculiar to this is the if-then. If this or that, for instance, is to be produced, but to use or averted, then some ways and means, circumstances, or opportunities will be needed. Circumspective deliberations illumines Dasein's current factical situation in the environment with which it concerns itself. Accordingly, such deliberations never merely affirms that some entity is present at hand or has such and such properties. Moreover, deliberations can be performed even when that which is brought close in it circumspectively is not palpably ready to hand and does not have presence within the closest range. Bringing the environment closer in circumspection deliberation has the existential meaning of a making present for envisaging. Here the familiar noun vergegenwärtigen, or envisaging, is printed with the first syllable in italics to draw attention to its connection with the special phenomenological verb gegenwärtigen, or making present. Okay, so to envision something and to make present something are directly related, which that's probably pretty obvious in 2024, but that was probably a much more profound thought in Heidegger's time. Is only a mode of this is envisaging one's deliberations catches sight directly of that which is needed but which is unready to hand. Circumspection which envisages does not relate itself to mere representations. Circumspective making present, however, is a phenomenon with more than one kind of foundation. All right, hang on. Right there. Let's check the chat room. Praxis, Sledge is a spirit cannibal. Let's see. I finally caught up a telechat, but I'm way behind in podcast duration. Okay, fully sick. Good to see you. Hey, Violence, how's it going? X's stance at large can stay 90 degree. The sumambulative, but our grade of X stance between benefits from its 45 kilter. Okay, got it. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And then, of course, you're looking at the plus sign and the multiplication sign, using the X in that particular manner. Circumspective deliberation, anagramming divulges. I think there's two N's. I think you meant anagramming, but that's all right. Propaganda or Papa Dragon. Which one rings accurate? Puff the Magic Dragon? In the first instance, it always belongs to a full ecstatical unity of temporality. It is grounded in a retention of that context of equipment with which Dasein concerns itself in awaiting a possibility. That which has already been laid open in awaiting and retaining is brought closer by one's deliberative making present or envisaging. All right, so here's envisaging again with an annotation. I don't have to read it. But if deliberation is to be able to operate in the scheme of the if-then, concern must already have surveyed a context of involvement and have an understanding of it. That which is considered with an if must already be understood as something or other. This does not require that the understanding of equipment be expressed in a prediction, in a predication. The schema something as something has already been sketched out beforehand in the structure of one's predictive understanding. The as structure is, that's kind of funny. Without the hyphen there, you could have said as structure. As structure is grounded ontologically in the temporality of understanding. But, on the other hand, only to the extent that das Sein, in awaiting some possibility, here this means a towards which, has come back to a towards this. That is to say that it retains something ready to hand. Only to this extent can the making present, which belongs to this awaiting and retaining, start with what is thus retained, and bring it in its character of having been assigned or referred to its towards which explicitly closer. The deliberations which bring it close must, in the schema of making present, be in conformity with the kind of being that belongs to what is to be brought close. The involvement character of the ready-to-hand does not first get discovered by deliberation, but only gets brought close by it in such a manner as to let that in which something has an involvement be seen circumspectively as this very thing. The way the present is rooted in the future and in having been is the existential temporal condition for the possibility that what has been projected in circumspective understanding can be brought closer in a making present, and in such a way that the present can thus conform itself to what is encountered within the horizon of awaiting and retaining. This means that it must interpret itself in the schema of the as structure. We have thus answered the question we formulated earlier, the question of whether the as structure has some existential ontological connection with the phenomenon of projection. Like understanding and interpretation in general, the as, grounded in the extatico, horizontal unity of temporality in our fundamental analysis of being, and of course in connection with the interpretation of the is, which, as a copula, gives expression to the addressing of something as something, we must again make the phenomenon of the as a theme and delimit the conception of this schema existentially. Let me double check how farther is the next page. Trying to find where the chapter goes. There it is. Okay. Okay. Oops. Wasn't I over here? No. I think it was over here, right? The Genesis, the question, the theoretical. No. Sorry, I lost my place, guys. I think I'm on this page. Yeah, this is where I was. The copula, Addressing something, we in. Okay, then I was over here. Schema exit. Oh, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Let me take a swig. The question of the genesis of theoretical behavior is one which we have left hanging. What can a temporal characterization of circumspective deliberations and its schemata contribute to the answering of it? Only that this elucidates the situation in which circumspective concern changes over into theoretical discovering, a situation of the kind which belongs to Dasein. We may then try to analyze this change over itself by taking as our clue an elementary assertion which is circumspectively deliberative in character and the modifications which are possible for it. When we are using a tool circumspectively, we can say, for instance, the hammer is too heavy or too light. Even the proposition that the hammer is heavy can give expression to a concernful deliberation and signify that the hammer is not an easy one, in other words, that it takes force to handle it, or that it will be hard to manipulate. Aus der Satz, der Hammer ist schwer, kann einer besorgenden Übergang Ausdruck geben und bedeuten, ist nicht leicht. Das heißt, fordert zur Handhabung Kraft bis wird die Handhabung erschweren. Here, Heidegger is exploiting the double meaning of the German pair of adjectives schwer and leicht, which may correspond either to the English pair of heavy and light or to the pair of difficult and easy. Okay, that makes perfect sense. We make those correlations in English allegory all the time. So anyway. But this proposition can also mean that the entity before us, which we already know circumspectively as a hammer, has a weight. That is to say, it has the property of heaviness. It exerts a pressure on what lies beneath it, and it falls if this is removed. When this kind of talk is so understood, it is no longer spoken within the horizon of awaiting and retaining an equipmental totality and its involvement relationships. What is said has been drawn from looking at what is suitable for an entity with mass. We have now cited something that is suitable for the hammer, not as a tool, but as a corporeal thing, subject to the law of gravity. To talk circumspectively of too heavy or too light no longer has any meaning. That is to say, the entity in itself as we now encounter it gives us nothing with relation to which it could be found too heavy or too light. Why is it that we are talking about the heavy hammer shows itself differently when our way of thinking is thus modified, not because we are keeping our distance from manipulation, nor because we are just looking away, absehen, from the equipmental character of this entity, but rather because we are looking at ansehen, the ready-to-hand thing which we encounter, and looking at it in a new way as something present at hand. The understanding of being by which our concernful dealing with entities within the world have been guided has changed over. But if instead of deliberating circumspectively about something ready to hand, we take it as something present at hand, has a scientific attitude thus constituted itself. Moreover, even that which is ready to hand can be made a theme for scientific investigation and determination. For instance, when one studies someone's environment, his milieu, in the context of a historiological biography, the context of equipment that is ready to hand in an everyday manner, its historical emergence and utilization, and its factical role in Dasein, all these are objects for the science of economics. The ready-to-hand can become the object of a science without having to lose its character as equipment. A modification of our understanding of being does not seem to be necessarily constitutive for the genesis of the theoretical attitude towards things. Certainly not, if this modification is to imply a change in the kind of being which, in understanding the entity before us, we understand it to possess. In our first description of the genesis of the theoretical attitude of our circumspection, we have made basic a way of theoretically grasping entities within the world, physical nature, in which the modification of our understanding of being is tantamount to a changeover in the physical assertion that the hammer is heavy. We overlook not only the tool character of the entity we encounter, but also something that belongs to any ready-to-hand equipment. Its place becomes a matter of indifference. This does not mean that what is present at hand loses its location altogether, but its place becomes a spatio-temporal position, a world point, which is in no way distinguished from any other. This implies not only that the multiplicity of places of equipment ready to hand within the confines of the environment becomes modified to a pure multiplicity of positions, but that the entities of the environment are altogether released from such confinement or enstrengt. The aggregate of the present at hand becomes the theme. So you got hammer, grammar, the pianist's touchstone, reflex test, superfragilistic expialidocious, give approval or a word for long words. A person's grammar divulges their regional, ready-to-hand, or referential mental scope. Okay. In the case before us, the releasing from such environmental confinement belongs to the way one's understanding of being has been modified. And it becomes at the same time a delimitation of the realm of the present at hand. If one now takes as one's guiding clue the understanding of being in the sense of present at hand, the more appropriately the being of the entities to be explored is understood under the guidance of an understanding of being, and the more the totality of entities has been articulated in its basic attributes as a possible area of subject matter for a science, all the more secure will be the perspective for one's methodical inquiry. Whew. Let me take that in for a second. Present at hand, being of the entities explored, is understood under the guidance for an understanding of being articulated in its basic attributes. Secure the perspective for one's method. Okay, so that passage is basically just acknowledging objectivism. Okay? It's bringing in multiple verifications from different testing points that paint the clearest and most certain picture of what something is. That's objectivism. The classical example for the historical development of a science and even for its ontological genesis is the rise of mathematical physics. Mathematical physics. I hope Terence Howard is listening. The classical example for the historical development of a science and even for its ontological genesis is the rise of mathematical physics. What is decisive for its development does not lie in its rather high esteem for the observation of facts, nor in its application of mathematics in determining the character of natural process. It lies rather in the way in which nature herself is mathematically projected. In this projection, something constantly present at hand, or matter, is uncovered beforehand, and the horizon is opened so that one may be guided by looking at those constitutive items in it which are quantitatively determinable. Motion, force, location, and time. Only in the light of a nature which has been projected in this fashion can anything like a fact be found and set up for an experiment regulated and delimited in terms of this projection. The grounding of factual science was possible only because the researchers understood that in principle there are no bare facts in the mathematical projection of nature. Moreover, what is decisive is not primarily the mathematical as such. What is decisive is that this projection discloses something that is a priori. Thus, the paradigmatic character of mathematical nature, science does not lie in its exactitude or in the fact that it's binding for every man. It consists rather in the fact that the entities which it takes as its theme are discovered in it in the only way in which entities can be discovered, by the prior projection of their state of being. When the basic concept of that understanding of being by which we are guided have been worked out, the clues of its methods, the structure of its way of conceiving things, the possibility of truth and the certainty which belongs to it, the ways in which things get grounded or proved, the mode in which it is binding for us, and the way it is communicated, all these will be determined. The totality of these items constitutes the full existential conception of science. The scientific projection of any entities which have somehow encountered already lets their kind of being be understood explicitly and in such a manner that it thus becomes manifest that ways what ways are possible for the pure discovery of entities within the world, the articulation of the understanding of being, the delimitation of an area of subject matter, a delimitation guided by this understanding, and the sketching out of the way of conceiving which is appropriate to such entities. All these belong to the totality of this projecting, and this totality is what we call thematizing. Its aim is to free the entities we encounter within the world and to free them in such a way that they can throw themselves against. Hold on a second. So its aim is to free entities we encounter within the world and to free them in such a way that they can throw themselves against. Now, and this is what we call thematizing. Okay. Entgegenwerfen. Heidegger is here calling attention to the fact that the word object literally means something thrown against. Interesting. Thematizing objectifies. It does not first posit the entities, but frees them so that one can interrogate them and determine their character objectively. Being which objectifies and which is alongside the present at hand within the world is characterized by a distinctive kind of making present. This making present is distinguished from the present of circumspection in that above all, the kind of discovering which belongs to the science in question awaits slowly the discoveredness of the present at hand. This awaiting of discoveredness has its existential basis in a resoluteness by which Dasein projects itself towards its potentiality for being in the truth. This projection is possible because being in the truth makes up a definite way in which Dasein may exist. We shall not trace further how science has its source in authentic existence. It is enough now if we understand that the thematizing of entities within the world presupposes being in the world as the basic state of Dasein if we understand how it does so. If the thematizing of the present at hand, the scientific projection of nature, is to become possible, Dasein must transcend the entities thematized. Transcendence does not consist of objectifying, but it presupposed by it. But is it presupposed by it? If, however, the thematizing of the present at hand within the world is a changeover from the concern which discovers by circumspection, then one's practical being alongside the ready-to-hand is something which a transcendence of Dasein must already underlie. If, moreover, thematizing modifies and articulates and the understanding of the being, then insofar as Dasein, the entities which thematize exist, it must already understand something like being. Such understanding of being can remain neutral. In that case, readiness to hand and presence at hand have not yet been distinguished. Still less have they been conceived ontologically. But if Dasein is to be able to have any dealings with the context of equipment, it must understand something like an involvement, even if it does not do so thematically. A world must have been disclosed to it. With Dasein factical existence, this world has been disclosed. If Dasein indeed exists essentially as being in the world, in the older editions, the sentence is introduced by und, or and being in the world. And if Dasein's being is completely grounded in temporality, then temporality must make possible being in the world, and there, with Dasein's transcendence, this transcendence in turn provides the support for concernful being alongside entities within the world, whether this being is theoretical or practical. Okay. Ooh, hopefully we can be out of here by 9:30. I'm gunning for 9:30, so let's throw that up. And let's see what you guys got here. Understanding of being, Latin scientific, to know that it is fiction. Scientifique. So, but isn't fic means one thing, but doesn't I see as at the end of a word, doesn't that also have a different connotation? Because it doesn't always have to have an F. All right, but anyway, let's run the next thing. Am I in the right spot? Yeah, I think so. All right. Boom. All right, guys. That was a good break. I had a couple of scoops of ice cream in that very, very short period of time, and now I feel fantastic. All right. Emoji in a bit, good. Pictographics, senses in a gray are. All right. Correction, right brain. Yeah, okay. Cool. All right. Excuse me. Part C, the temporal problem of the transcendence of the world. All right, so this is the problem of the time of getting out of the world, right? Circumspective concern includes the understanding of a totality of involvements, and this understanding is based upon a prior understanding of the relationship of the in order to, the towards which, the towards this, and the for the sake of. The interconnection of these relationships has been exhibited earlier as significance. Their unity makes up what we call the world. The question arises of how anything like the world in its unity with Dasein is ontologically possible. In what way must the world be if Dasein is to be able to exist as being in the world? Dasein exists for the sake of a potentiality for being of itself. In existing, it has been thrown, and as something thrown, it has been delivered over to entities which it needs in order to be able to be as it is. Namely, for the sake of itself, insofar as Dasein exists factically, it understands itself in the way its for the sake of itself is thus connected with some current in order to. That inside which existing Dasein understands itself is there along with its factical existence. That inside which one primarily understands oneself has Dasein kind of being Dasein is its world existingly. We have defined Dasein's being as care. The ontological meaning of care is temporality. We have shown that temporality constitutes the disclosedness of the there, and we have shown how it does so. In the disclosedness of the there, the world is disclosed along with it. The unity of significance that is the ontological constitution of the world must then likewise be grounded in temporality. The existential temporal condition of the possibility of the world lies in the fact that temporality as an ecstatical unity has something like a horizon. Ecstasies are not simply raptures in which one gets carried away. Rather, there belongs to each ecstasis a whither to which one is carried away. Hold on. Okay. All right, that doesn't help. The whither of the ecstasis we call the horizontal schema. In each of the three ecstases, the ecstatical horizon is different. The schema in which Dasein comes towards itself futurally, whether authentically or inauthentically, is the for the sake of futurally, for the sake of itself, the schema in which Dasein is disclosed to itself in a state of mind as thrown is to be taken as that in the face of which it has been thrown and that to which it has been abandoned. This characterizes the horizontal schema of what has been. In existing for the sake of itself in abandonment to itself as something that has been thrown, Dasein as being alongside is at the same time making present. The horizontal schema for the present is defined by the in order to. The unity of the horizontal schemata of future, present, and having been is grounded in the ecstatical unity of temporality. The horizon of temporality as a whole determines what whereupon or wherehelfen factically existing entities are essentially disclosed. With one's factical being there, a potentiality for being is in each case projected in the horizon of the future. One's being already is disclosed in the horizon for having been, and that with which one concerns oneself is discovered in the horizon of the present. The horizontal unity of the schemata of these ecstasies makes possible the primordial way in which the relationships of the in order to are connected with the for the sake of. This implies that on the basis of the horizontal constitution of the ecstatical unity of temporality. Holy. Okay, temporality. There belongs to the entity which is in each case its own there and something like a world that has been disclosed. Just as the present arises in the unity of temporalizing a temporality of the future and having been, the horizon of a present temporalizes itself equiprimordially with those of the future and of having been. Insofar as Dasein temporalizes itself, a world is too. In temporalizing itself with regard to its being as temporality, Dasein is. Hold on a second. And, like, once again, this is getting into the flow state of the Norns, right? This is all flow state of the Norns stuff. The italics are only supplied in later editions. Okay, so that's all that means. Dasein is essentially in a world by reason of the ecstatico-horizonal constitution of that temporality. The world is neither present at hand nor ready to hand, but temporalizes itself in temporality. It is with the outside of itself of the ecstasis there. If no Dasein exists, no world is there either. The world is already presupposed in one's being, alongside the ready-to-hand, concernfully and factically in one's thematizing of the present at hand, and in one's discovering of this latter entity by objectification. That is to say, all these are possible only as ways of being in the world, having its grunden in the horizontal unity of ecstatical temporality. The world is transcendent. It must already have been ecstatically disclosed so that in terms of its entities within the world can be encountered. Temporality already maintains itself ecstatically within the horizons of the ecstasis, and in temporalizing itself, it comes back to those entities which are encountered in the there. With Dasein's factical existence, entities within the world are already encountered too. The fact that such entities are discovered along with Dasein's own there of existence is not left to Dasein's discretion. Only what it discovers and discloses on occasion in what direction it does so. How and how far it does so. Only these are matters of Dasein's freedom, even if always within the limitations of its thrownness. Thus the significance of relationships which determine the structure of the world are not a network of forms which a worldless subject has laid over some kind of material. What is rather the case is the factical Dasein understanding itself and its world ecstatically in the unity of the there, comes back from these horizons to the entities encountered within them. Coming back to these entities, understandingly, is the existential meaning of letting them be encountered by making them present. That is why we call them entities within the world. The world is, as it were, already further outside than any object can ever be. The problem of transcendence cannot be brought round to the question of how a subject comes out to an object, where the aggregate of objects is identified with the idea of the world. Rather, we must ask what makes it ontologically possible for entities to be encountered. Wow, okay. Ah! Ah! I am so sorry. Okay, I didn't read that word yet. Italics supplied. Okay, I think I'm somewhere in here. Thrownness. Oh my god. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, Horizons ecstasis, only what it discovers, and how and far these Dasein's freedom within the limitation. No, wait. I think I was in here somewhere, right? Grunden, relationship which determines the structure. Oh my gosh. Okay, so, Okay, so you know what, guys? I'm gonna start from here. The world is already presupposed in one's being alongside the ready-to-hand, concernful, and factical in one's thematizing of the present at hand, and in one's discovering of this latter entity by objectification. That is to say, all these are possible only as ways of being in the world, having its ground, or Grunden, in the horizontal unity of ecstatical temporality. The world is transcendent. It must always have been ecstatical, disclosed, so that in terms of it, entities within the world can be encountered. Temporality already maintains itself ecstatically within the horizons of its ecstasis, and in temporalizing itself, it comes back to those entities which are encountered in the there. With Dasein's factical existence, entities within the world are already encountered too. The fact that such entities are discovered along with Dasein's own there of existence is not left to Dasein's discretion. Only what it discovers and discloses on occasion, in what direction it does so, how and how far it does so, only these are matters for Dasein's freedom, even if always within the limitations of its thrownness. Thus the significance relationships which determine the structure of the world are not a network of forms which a worldless subject has laid over some kind of material. What is rather the case is the factical Dasein understanding itself and its world ecstatically in the unity of the there, comes from these horizons to the entity encountered within them. Coming back to these entities understandingly is the existential meaning of letting them be encountered by making them present. That is why we call them entities within the world. The world is, as it were, already further outside than any object can ever be. The problem of transcendence cannot be brought round to the question of how a subject comes out of an object, where the aggregate of objects is identified with the idea of the world. Rather, we must ask what makes it ontologically possible for entities to be encountered within the world and objectified as so. Oh, wait a minute. Objectified as so. Oh, that's what it's doing. Okay. As so encountered, this can be answered by recourse to the transcendence of the world, a transcendence with an ecstatico-horizontal foundation. If the budget gets conceived ontologically as an existing Dasein whose being is grounded in temporality, then one must say that the world is subjective. But in that case, the subjective world as one that is temporally transcendent is more objective than any possible object. When being in the world is traced back to the ecstatico-horizontal unity of temporality, the existential ontological possibility of this basic state of Dasein is made intelligible. At the same time, it becomes plain that a concrete working out of the world structure in general and its possible variations can be tackled only if the ontology of possible entities within the world is oriented securely enough by clarifying the idea of being in general. If an interpretation of this idea is to be possible, the temporality of Dasein must be exhibited beforehand. Here, our characterization of being in the world will be of service. Okay. Alright, so he makes a very, very important point, which is pretty much the point that everybody has been saying that isn't part of, like, the transcendence community. You know, transcendence community is people that want to get raptured and 5D'd and all that stuff, right? You know, anybody with that prepping for the day. It's a prepping for the day. It's not really doing anything. It's prepping. It's busy work about a promised event that's outside of you because of what you're doing inside you, and but you're waiting for it to change the world, and then when it doesn't change the world, you gaslight yourself out of believing that the world was going to change, and the problem is that not even you changed. You just simply feel better. Or at least you've given your mind a false sense of security, right? You have to have the right mindset. You know, my mindset stirs from knowing, like, I know I can get fucked over by everything, just like that. I know it. And I take risks anyway. I'm working on a whole lot of things that put me in the situation that I'm in. And there's a lot to be grateful about the situation that I am in, and I am grateful that I didn't make very, very, very poor choices in certain regards, and I'm disappointed in myself about other poor choices I've made, especially poor choices before the emergence of the new era. But that's just the funny way that we do our shadow work, and you know, you don't quite realize everything you have to do until you've spent a whole lot of time realizing that you've been doing it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Can't wait to, get to the end of this bad boy. So I will catch you guys soon. My work schedule is lightening up this week, even though my vacation is over. So, I might go live tomorrow night. I'm not sure. We'll see. I got to go back to work. I will catch you guys later.